snarling anger, none in the world a meaner bitch than you. So 2 times we have that word used in reference to Hera. So he erupted Zeus, but the white-armed goddess Hera answered not a word. She'll get her revenge on Zeus. It will happen later, and we'll discover his Achilles heel as well, and that will, of course, be, as we know, sex. Finally, we have the ended day at the very end. We have Hector with his speech. It is, of course, a marvelous speech of optimism. It's darkly ironic because we know that in the end, Hector will die and the city of Troy will fall. He will finish at line 607 or so. That's our battle order, my iron-hearted Trojans, just as I command. In other words, we're not going to go back to Troy. We're going to stay out here on the battlefield. We're going to keep our fires burning so none of them can get away. Hector's most worried right now, not about winning, but about letting those Greeks get away. He wants to slaughter every last one of them for having the unmitigated gall to come on and attack his city. He says, "Let the order I issue now stand firm and clear, and the stirring call to arms I sound tomorrow morning, my stallion breaking, Trojans." And then he says it, darkly ironic. "My hopes are rising now. I pray to Zeus and the great array of deathless gods that we will whip the Achaeans howling out of Troy and drive them off to death. Those dogs of war." We think, of course, of Julius Caesar and the Antinous speech and Mark Antony's speech, right, in Julius Caesar and Shakespeare's play. "The deadly fates drove here in their black ships. So now, for the night, we guard our own positions, but tomorrow at daybreak, armed to the hilt for battle, waken slashing war against their hollow hulls. I'll soon see if that mighty Diomedes rams me back from the ships and back against our walls, or I kill him with bronze and strip his bloody armor." Finally, at the very end of the book, we are told that 1,000 fires were burning there on the plain, and beside each fire sat 50 fighting men poised in the leaping blaze, and champing oats and glistening barley, stationed by their chariots, stallions waited for dawn to mount her glowing throne. So in other words, at the conclusion of Book 8, it's over for the Greeks. They're done. They are all backed up to their ships. Hector and his Trojans are camped so they can't get away, and tomorrow morning it's going to be over. We will have the total devastation of the Greeks. Book 9, Agamemnon has to send for help. Help from who? Well, the one we've barely seen now since Book 1 ended, Achilles. So from Book 2 to Book 8, we've got Achilles. He's out of the war. Notice he was mentioned several times, but we don't have him. In Book 9, we'll meet him. Let's jump to 2a quickly as we finish up. Well, obviously, a major message here. One is don't mess with Zeus, right? Don't forget, right, that this was a religious text for the Greeks, and it was made very, very clear in this poem. You do not want to mess with Zeus. He's all-powerful. Hey, think about this. It's a 3 observation that I'll say now. When we study our Plato's Republic, right, and we meet at the end of Book 1 Thrasymachus and the Thrasymachus position that might makes right, in many ways, Thrasymachus is just mirroring what the Greeks understand about King God Zeus. It's not a matter of justice, it's a matter of power. Might makes right. You'll remember that in that famous history moment from Herodotus, we're told that there's that moment, and Thucydides as well, we'll talk about this. There are moments when the Greeks are, for example, the Milesians will say to the Greeks, "You cannot do this, this is not right, you're trying to take us down, and it's not just." And they will simply respond, "We can do it because we have the power to do it." There's no such thing of whether it's right or wrong. It's about what can we get away with because we have so much power. And to that degree, we're back to this notion of the message, don't mess with Zeus. Of course, another major message 2a at Book 8 is that things are not always what they seem, right? The Trojans will lose this war. That is to say, you can win the battle and lose the war, right? At 2b, major symbols. Well, Zeus's scales are obviously an important one, the decider. We're going to hear more about this later in our poem. We're also going to hear about 2 jars that Zeus keeps. And in the 2 jars, he keeps the good things and the bad things. This notion of a dualism, and there's a certain idea that sometimes there's good, sometimes there's bad, and sometimes there's a fate that is decided. Sometimes Zeus gets to determine that. Other times it seems in the Iliad that, in fact, fate even is higher than Zeus. In other words, there's things that have to happen, and Zeus can't really stop that kind of thing, okay? Obviously, another symbol is these 1,000 fires that are burning at the end, right? That is to say, they represent hope And of course, an irony to jump there now is that those fires, in fact, will all go out, right? And Troy will fall at some point, which is sad, right? Also note the irony, Hera versus Zeus. This battle, however, won't yet be over. Ultimately, later in the Iliad, Hera will get Zeus, and she'll do it through Zeus's Achilles heel, if I can use that phrase, and of course it's sex, right? His sex drive. At 3a, well, I've already mentioned that Milton's Paradise Lost will come back to borrow heavily from this notion of the scales. I've also mentioned, of course, that Plato's Republic, you can read Plato's Republic, especially the Thrasymachon position, through the use of this. By the way, we have the lectures for Plato's Republic at learnstrong.net in the AP folder, so you can take a look at that to be reminded of what we're talking about there. Books 2 through 8 then, also 3a, will lead to Book 9, one of that really central books of the Iliad. We're almost halfway through. Remember, at Book 12, we're halfway through this story, and we're going to meet Achilles in the next book. They need Achilles because of what's been going on. By the way, what are some other texts for you where the battle is won but the war is lost? In other words, it looks like everything's going to go one direction in terms of conflict and it ends up going in the opposite direction. At 3b, a personal kind of referencing here, a time when you won the battle but lost the war, since we were saying it, right? Let me ask you this question. What do you think of Zeus? Is he just a bully? Or is he trying to be fair and allow both sides to have a chance here? Like, what are your thoughts about him? And especially the way that he treats both his daughter as well as Athena, as well as his wife Hera, right? How would you define that relationship between Zeus and Hera? That, of course, many Greeks had serious problems. We think of Socrates. Thinking about their deity, the king deity, this way, who is so anthropomorphic, right? So human-like, that it's hard to reverence such a god. Or some would say, you know, it kind of parallels the patriarchal view of the day. That male figure who has full and dominant power, you do what I say or you'll get jacked. We saw that already in Book 1. We hear it again now. Zeus every once in a while just needing to be able to prove just how strong he is, right? What are your views of Hector all the way up now to Book 8, right? Is he maybe the most rounded character, right? Full character of Books 2 through 8. Certainly he gets primary limelight, shares it obviously with Diomedes for a while, but no question, Hector is the man. It's an interesting poem because we will finish, not with the death of Achilles, but with the death of Hector. And this poem will end, in fact, with great reverence being shown to Hector. So we want to pay attention to Hector. Well, speaking of Hector, if he is the Trojans' greatest warrior, obviously the greatest warrior for the Greeks is Achilles. All of this is happening. That is to say, the Trojans are winning. Not just because Zeus has willed it so, but because obviously Achilles is not fighting. Achilles the greatest warrior. And so we've got this question about what will it take to get Achilles back into the war? And the answer is not Agamemnon and all of his temptation, all of his tempting with gold and treasure. That is to say, right, Time, the Scooby snacks. But what will get ultimately Achilles back into the war will be the death of his best friend Patroclus. Well, let's turn now to Book 9. I hope you're enjoying this study as much as am I. Thank you.